It was a bright Tuesday morning at Oak Ridge Elementary School. The hallways buzzed with excitement as students from grades 1 through 5 prepared for the annual Spring Academic Bowl. This year, the competition was especially important because the school was trying to raise money for new playground equipment. The old swings and slides had been in place for over 20 years, and the metal was beginning to rust in places despite the maintenance staff's best efforts to keep everything safe and in working order. In Mrs. Henderson's kindergarten class, 5-year-old XAEA-12 Musk was busy coloring a picture of a rocket ship. With his dark curly hair falling over his forehead and his blue eyes focused intently on his work, he carefully selected a bright red crayon for the flames shooting out from the bottom of the spacecraft. X loved anything to do with space, a passion he had clearly inherited from his father, Elon Musk, the famous entrepreneur and founder of SpaceX. X, would you like to use some yellow for the flames too? Mrs. Henderson suggested, stopping by his table. Real rocket flames are often yellow and orange as well as red. X looked up at his teacher with a smile that revealed a missing front tooth. Yes. And blue too, because the hottest part of the flame is actually blue. My dad told me that. Mrs. Henderson nodded, always impressed by the bits of advanced knowledge X would casually share. He was an unusual child in many ways, intensely curious, surprisingly articulate for his age, and remarkably kind to his classmates. Though he could sometimes get lost in his own imagination, daydreaming about space exploration or electric cars, he was also genuinely interested in other people in a way that was uncommon for a child so young. As X continued coloring, adding yellow and blue to his rocket flames, he suddenly realized he needed to use the bathroom. He raised his hand politely, the way Mrs. Henderson had taught the class to do. Yes, X. Mrs. Henderson asked. May I please go to the bathroom? He asked clearly. Of course, she replied, handing him the special bathroom pass, a wooden star painted blue, that kindergartners carried to show they had permission to be in the hallway. Do you remember where it is? X nodded confidently. Down the hall, turn right, and it's the third door. Very good, Mrs. Henderson said with a smile. Come right back when you're finished. X took the star and headed out into the hallway. The school seemed unusually quiet, with most students either in their classrooms or gathered in the gymnasium for the academic bowl. X walked carefully, holding the blue star in both hands, feeling very grown up to be trusted to go to the bathroom by himself. When he reached the place where he was supposed to turn right, X hesitated. Was it right or left? He looked both ways, trying to remember. The hallway to the left seemed to lead towards some double doors, while the hallway to the right continued past several classroom doors. After a moment's consideration, X decided to turn left, thinking the bathroom might be through those double doors. As he approached the doors, he could hear the muffled sound of voices and occasional applause coming from the other side. Curious, X pushed one of the doors open slightly and peeked inside. What he saw was the school gymnasium filled with rows of chairs where students were sitting in groups. At the front of the room was a long table with adults sitting behind it and a woman standing at a microphone. X recognized the gymnasium, of course, but he had never seen it set up this way before. During his regular gym class, there were always colorful balls and hoops and other equipment scattered around. Now, it looked more like a big meeting room. His curiosity piqued, X slipped through the door, completely forgetting about his bathroom mission. The woman at the microphone was Mrs. Blackwell, the school principal. She was tall with short gray hair and always wore colorful scarves. X liked her because she sometimes visited the kindergarten class to read stories, and she did all the different character voices. And now we'll begin the third grade portion of our competition. Mrs. Blackwell was saying. Teams, please take your places. X watched as groups of children moved to chairs arranged in the front of the gymnasium. They seemed excited but also a little nervous. Some were whispering to each other, while others sat very still, looking straight ahead with serious expressions. As X stood near the back of the gymnasium, trying to understand what was happening, a teacher he didn't recognize approached him. She was a young woman with a kind smile and curly brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. "Are you one of our third grade participants?" she asked, kneeling down to his level. "You look a little lost." X shook his head. "I'm in kindergarten. Mrs. Henderson's class." The teacher looked surprised. "Oh. Well, this is the academic bowl for the older students. Were you looking for someone?" "I was going to the bathroom," X explained, suddenly remembering his original mission, "but I saw the doors and wanted to see what was happening." The teacher nodded understandingly. "The bathroom is actually in the other direction, sweetie. But since you're here, are you supposed to be part of the younger division? We have a few second graders participating in a special category later." Before X could explain that he wasn't supposed to be participating at all, Mrs. Blackwell called out from the front of the room, "Miss Carter, do we have all our third grade participants now?" The teacher who had been speaking to X, Miss Carter, looked up. "Just one more, Mrs. Blackwell. I think he might be a bit lost." Mrs. Blackwell gestured for them to come forward. "Well, bring him up. We need to get started." Miss Carter turned back to X with an encouraging smile. "Come on, let's get you to your team. Which class are you from?" X, not wanting to cause trouble and a bit confused by the situation, simply repeated, "Mrs. Henderson's class." "Henderson? I don't think I know that teacher." "Must be new this year," Miss Carter murmured, mostly to herself. "Well, come on, we'll find your team." She took X's hand and led him toward the front of the gymnasium. X, still holding his Blue Star bathroom pass in his other hand, followed along, his eyes wide as he took in the scene. There were 3 groups of children seated in the front, each wearing different colored t-shirts, red, blue, and green. Miss Carter led X to the green team, where there seemed to be an empty chair. "I think this must be your group," she said. "Their team is one person short." The third graders in green shirts looked at X with confusion. He was obviously much younger and smaller than they were, and they didn't recognize him from their class. But before anyone could say anything, Mrs. Blackwell had returned to the microphone. "Excellent. Now we have all our participants. Let's begin the third grade academic bowl." X found himself seated between 2 much bigger kids, clutching his Blue Star and feeling very out of place. The girl next to him leaned over and whispered, "Are you really on our team? You look like a kindergartner." "I am in kindergarten," X whispered back. "I was trying to find the bathroom." The girl's eyes widened. "Oh no. You're not supposed to be here." "We should tell," but at that moment, Mrs. Blackwell began explaining the rules and the girl fell silent, looking worriedly at X. "Each team will take turns answering questions," Mrs. Blackwell explained. "If you know the answer, raise your hand. If you get it right, your team earns a point. The team with the most points at the end wins a special prize and, of course, contributes the most to our playground fundraiser. Remember, each correct answer means another dollar donated by our generous sponsors." X perked up at the mention of the playground. He loved the playground, even though some of the equipment was old and sometimes the swings would squeak so loudly that it hurt his ears. The idea of helping to get new playground equipment made him feel excited to be part of this game, even if he had ended up there by accident. First question. Mrs. Blackwell announced. What is the capital of California? Several hands shot up around the room. Mrs. Blackwell pointed to a boy in a red shirt. Jacob. Sacramento. The boy answered confidently. Correct. Mrs. Blackwell smiled. 1 point for the red team. The questions continued, covering topics like multiplication tables, famous historical figures, and basic science facts. X watched with growing interest, though he didn't raise his hand because he didn't know the answers to these big kid questions. Then Mrs. Blackwell asked, "What is 7/8?" The room was quiet for a moment as the third graders thought about the answer. X, who had been watching everyone raise their hands for previous questions, decided he wanted to participate too. He thrust his hand into the air, still holding the blue star. Mrs. Blackwell looked surprised to see the small boy raising his hand but called on him. Yes, the young man in the green team with the blue star. Happy. X announced confidently. There was a moment of confused silence, followed by scattered giggles from the audience. Mrs. Blackwell looked puzzled. I'm sorry, but the answer is 56. 7/8 equals 56. X wasn't bothered by being wrong. He smiled brightly. I thought you asked what California is. People in movies are always happy when they talk about California because it's sunny there. This time, the laughter that spread through the gymnasium was warm and genuine. Mrs. Blackwell couldn't help smiling herself. I see the confusion. That was a previous question, but thank you for your enthusiastic participation. What's your name, young man? X Musk, he replied clearly. A murmur ran through the audience, many of the teachers and some of the older students